Today we'll be looking at the current perspectives in psychology. Now, in this session, we'll be looking at, uh, we'll be able to explain the current perspective of psychology, understand biological perspective, understand psychological perspective, understand social perspective, understand biopsychosocial perspective, and be able to explain the positive perspective. Now, even though we've actually looked at the positive perspective, positivist psychologist, we will dwell more and explain better here because it's a very important psychological viewpoint that has helped shape situation and uh, the activities of psychologists. So, as I earlier said, in the past, loyalty to a school of thought was the major means of studying psychology, and to some extent, there were clashes where these theorists believed that functionalists believed that no, structuralists were not doing well. In short, when behaviorists came, the behaviorism believed that no, all the functionalism, structuralism were just wasting time. He just discovered the gem in psychology, so all those ones are just wasting time. When the cognitive came, they just made others feel like no, you're not doing anything. But that is why we say it was more about loyalty to school of thoughts other than a collective uh, uh, studies, a more harmonious relationship among scholars. So it was more of a clash just to propagate a particular viewpoint above the other. Today, most of the older school of thought are blended into newer and broader perspectives, as we will see as we progress. So psychological perspectives are different ways of thinking about and explaining human behavior, different perspectives, different viewpoints. But these viewpoints are more objective, are more scientific, are more acceptable, are more precise when defining behaviors and human existence. So psychologists utilizes a variety of perspectives when studying how people think, people feel, and people behave. So the first perspective we'll be looking at is the biological perspective. This perspective seeks to explain human behavior in terms of biological principle. Now, this includes the brain process, the genetics, and evolution, how human changes metamorphosize from time to time, how our genetic disposition predispose us to act in a particular way, how our brain chemistry determine how we act. Now, it is this perspective that helped us to get to a point where mental health issues like addiction are now seen as not just a moral failure, but as a brain disease. How? Because over time, research has shown, with sophisticated equipment, have shown that a long-term use and exposure to harmful substances can recolonize the brain, affect the brain to the point that the brain becomes influences one to keep using and have difficulty in stopping. Now, this perspective, or scholars in this perspective, uses advanced techniques to produce exciting insight about how the brain relates to thinking, feeling, perception, abnormal behavior, and other topics. Now, just today, I was reading a research from by scholars from biological perspective or viewpoint of life that believes that even abusive relationship in childhood can affect the brain development even to adulthood. Now, these are, in as much as we believe that it affects one-on-one relationship, this one believes that, these scholars believe that the brain is responsible for how we think and believe. Now, if you have read through some literatures in psychology, like a book by Andrew Goldman, Social Intelligence, you will discover that even your brain is wired to communicate or to relate with individuals. So this makes us understand that human behavior can significantly be influenced by our brain chemistry and our genetic makeup. You will equally believe and understand with me that there are so many diseases today, mental illness, physical illness, that are significantly influenced by our genetic disposition. So this perspective is very important. So there are scholars that are strong adherents to biological school of thought. Now, the next school of thought or perspective in understanding psychology that is dominantly used today is the psychological perspective that takes the view that behavior is shaped by our psychological processes within each person. This perspective emphasizes on the role of objective observation. The psychological perspective now includes cognitive behaviorism and cognitive psychology, meaning the way you think influences the way you act. The other, biological, the way your brain is determines the way you act. This one, the way you think, the way you perceive, the way you relate, the way you information that comes from your mind, information that comes from your brain, the way you even retrieve the information will determine the way you act. Now, there are other psychological factors that are believed to influence human behavior. So this perspective also look at the role of personality, self-esteem, emotion, stress, etc. as psychological variables that predict human behavior. Personality factors. So personality factors are predisposition to act in a particular way over a period of time. Your self-esteem, emotional factors, stress-related factors has a great deal in determining how we behave. Now, in addition to this, to biological factors, psychological factors, we have the socio-cultural perspective. The socio-cultural perspective stresses the impact of social and cultural context, the impact social and cultural context have on our behavior. Now, you will believe me and understand with me that our behavior, where you come from, if you see an Igbo man, you will know that this is an Igbo man. If you see a Hausa man, you will understand this one is from Hausa or speaks Hausa. Why? Because his culture, orientation, geographical location can even determine our dressing, can determine our behavior, can determine our eating habit, can determine our choice of food, can determine about how we relate with others. So we are rapidly becoming the society is rapidly becoming a multicultural society made up of people from different nations. Yes, the society is generally a multicultural society. Wherever you found yourself, no matter how remote you are, you still discover that the presence of somebody who doesn't belong to that environment, that location, that culture will just be visible. So most of what we think, feel, or do is influenced in one way or the other by social and cultural worlds in which we live. You will discover that the people that were born in the 50s and people that are born the Gen Zs today, you will discover because of cultural shift and socio-environmental modifications, their behaviors are not the same. They may come from the same language, the same tribe, the same village, but their orientation and viewpoint about life is different. This perspective explains the role of social relationship, social role of peer, social role, yeah, peer relationship, social roles. That's who you are. A father, are you a father, a son, a daughter? Peer influence, who are your friends? Family, where you came from. Parenting, how you were raised. Cultural belief, the culture you belong to. Religiosity, the religion you practice. Islam, Christian. Even within Christianity, there are different denominations and different faith beliefs. You will discover that even within the Islamic world, there are different beliefs. So you will, what is called sociocultural perspective is saying is that in as much as we have brains, we equally have psychological variables. We are equally influenced by our sociocultural affiliation, the environment you stay and live, and that is why where you come from can determine how intelligent or how modest or how arrogant or how mannered your child can be, or you are. You are who you are according to this perspective by a combination of so many social cultural variables, which the last point explains the social relationship, the social role you occupy, peer influence, family, parenting, cultural beliefs, and religiosity, among others. So these are some of the factors that they believe equally shapes human behavior. So this particular perspective are mostly championed by those in the social psychologists, by social psychologists. So you equally discover that this has been incorporated into every facet of psychology. If you are looking at it from a clinical perspective, there are sociocultural predictors of mental illness. If you are looking at it from a forensic perspective, there are sociocultural issues relating to crime, criminality, and other vices, among other factors. Now, one of the most encompassing, eclectic, if I use that word, perspective is what we call the biopsychosocial perspective. The biopsychosocial perspective incorporate or view situation from all the three that we have mentioned before. Biopsychosocial approach systematically consider biological factors, psychological factors, and social factors and their complex interaction in understanding health, illness, and general human behavior. According to this perspective, biological factors, psychological factors, and social factors exist along a continuum of natural systems that in turn influences, determine, and predict human behavior. So the biological, look at the physiological pathology, the psycho in the biopsychosocial, look at the thought, emotion, and behavior such as psychological distress, fear, avoidance, beliefs, current coping methods, and attributions as a variable. Then the social, look at the socio-economic, socio-environmental, cultural factors, work such as work-related issues, family circumstances, and benefits, so economical issues that influences human behavior. So this is a more eclectic view, summing all the three above. So that, for example, let me give you how this perspective works. I have worked in the clinical settings for a period of time, for a while, and I still manage cases relating to mental illness. If I happen to come across a client or a patient, the first thing I do is to look at what are there biological factors? Are there issues that has to do with either brain related, affected, or influenced issues? Are there issues that is the problem coming from a genetic factor? Does he have a genetic foundation to this? Was his mental illness as a result of another medical condition? Is it related to either high blood pressure or other irregularities in the system? The second point I'll now look at, what is his mental state? Is he delusional? Is it hallucinating? Are his thoughts incongruent with his mood and affect? And other things that I look at. Now, I now look at, okay, what are his family environment like? What is the environment? Is he is he living in a drug-infested environment? What is his economic status? Does he have a job? What is his cultural belief? Will his cultural and religious belief allow him to have to adhere to treatment? There are beliefs that people hold that they can actually be cured through miracles. So if somebody has strong belief in that direction, it means you have to equally be able to understand his belief pattern and see how you can intervene to help him achieve stability. So this biopsychosocial perspective is very, very important. In as much as I am not totally advocating for it, I'm equally saying that it has an all-encompassing theoretical perspective that you can look at situation holistically in understanding human behavior. So earlier, when we were talking about the school of thought, we talked about the positive psychology. Now, the psychologists have always paid attention to negative side of human behavior. I've mentioned that earlier. More psychologists have recently begun to ask, what do we know about love, happiness, creativity, well-being, self-confidence, and achievement? How can these factors help an individual break away from adversity? Yes. How can we break away from negativism? How can we improve positive human relations? How can we advance positive interpersonal relationship? How can we improve marriages from a positive perspective? Why can we stop blaming each other and start looking at how to make things and life more easier and beneficial to everyone? Now, the positive psychology is the study of human strength, virtues, and optimal behavior. It aims to bring out the best in you. Every human being has something great in him. We have treasures. So when sometimes we are focused at throwing stone at people who have done bad, positive psychology will tell you, look at the remaining good in that person. Bring it out. Strengthen him. Making somebody feel, wow, you've actually not done well. You know, right? But I think we can actually make it better. When a child comes back with a bad grade, instead of flogging, you look at it and say, but you know you can do better, right? You know this is not your grade. You know you are better than this. I know you have what it takes to do better. Why not we try? What is the problem? Okay, you are weak in mathematics, but you can be able to make it better. So you look at that thing in the person that you can strengthen, that the remaining good, that remaining positive in the person you can strengthen to bring out the best, is what positive psychology is looking at. In a to do bad, they are built with the ability to be good, such as human has the ability to do good. Human has the ability to do good. That is what this theory advocates. No single perspective is better than another. Instead, each simply emphasizes different aspects of human behavior. Some researchers focus more on one specific school of thought, while others take more eclectic approach that incorporates multiple points of view. Thank you. I believe you've had a wonderful session delving into psychology. We'll meet in the next session, and I believe um, you are impacted by psychology. You can do well, ask questions, um, send your observation. Uh, I look forward to your feedback generally. Thank you very much. See you in next class.